Amir opened his eyes slowly. His vision was blurry, and a dull ache spread through his chest. For a moment, he thought he was still on the battlefield, but the silence around him felt wrong. The last thing he remembered was the sound of explosions tearing through his ship. He had been running toward an escape pod when the floor shook, and something heavy struck him from behind. After that, only darkness. Now he lay on a soft bed, but it was not like any human medical bed he had seen before. The surface glowed faintly with a pale blue light, and strange lines of energy pulsed beneath him as if the bed itself was alive. Above him, small crystal-like devices floated in the air, shifting gently like they were watching him. He tried to sit up, but pain burned through his ribs, forcing him back down. The room around him was unlike any human hospital. The walls were curved and smooth, shining with silver light. There were no sharp corners, only flowing shapes as if the entire chamber had been carved from a single piece of stone. Strange symbols moved across the walls like living letters. The air smelled faintly sweet, not like medicine or disinfectant, but something almost like flowers. As Amir tried to make sense of his surroundings, he heard soft footsteps. A figure approached, dressed in a long white uniform that shimmered slightly under the light. The figure wore a mask that covered most of the face, leaving only large silver eyes visible. The eyes were calm, but behind them Amir could sense a weight, like someone who had not rested in a long time. The figure placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Her fingers were longer than human fingers, but warm to the touch. Her voice came through the mask, soft and steady. "You are safe now. Do not move too much. Your injuries are healing." Amir blinked at her. Her words carried an accent, but the meaning was clear. Somehow the machines in the room must have been translating for him. He tried to speak, his voice rough. "Where am I? What happened to my ship?" "You are on our station," she said, checking the glowing devices above him. "You were found among the wreckage after the battle. Your ship was destroyed. You are fortunate to be alive." The memory returned in a rush. The human fleet had been ambushed. Their ships had fought bravely, but the enemy had been stronger. Amir remembered seeing fire across the sky, the desperate calls of his crew, and then the explosion that had thrown him into darkness. Now he was here, alive but far from his people. The nurse adjusted the bed, making him more comfortable. She moved with precise skill, yet Amir noticed something unusual. Her hands shook slightly as she worked. Her movements were careful, but the tremble betrayed her exhaustion. Amir studied her eyes. They were sharp, but he saw the faint shadows beneath them. She had likely been working for hours, maybe days, tending to wounded like him. He recognized the same look he had seen on human medics after long battles. "You have been working hard," he said quietly. His throat was dry, but he forced the words out. "You look exhausted." The nurse froze for a moment. Her hand paused over the controls of the bed. Her silver eyes widened, as if his words had struck her in a way she had not expected. For a long second, she said nothing. Finally, she nodded slightly and turned away, as if hiding her reaction. "Rest now," she said, her voice softer than before. "You need strength to recover." Amir closed his eyes, though his mind remained awake. He thought about the strangeness of his situation. He was a human soldier, lying wounded on an alien station, being cared for by someone who should have been his enemy. Yet in her trembling hands and weary eyes, he saw not an enemy, but someone carrying the same burdens as humans did. Time passed slowly. The machines around him hummed with low energy, and he drifted in and out of sleep. Each time he woke, the nurse was there, checking his wounds, adjusting the glowing bed, or replacing a container of liquid that flowed into his arm. She moved like a shadow, always present, always watching, yet she never spoke more than a few words. Amir wondered about her. What was her name? Did she have family waiting for her somewhere? Did she feel fear when battles shook the station? Or was she so used to pain and loss that she had hidden it all away behind the mask? As he lay there, he realized something. The battlefield had taken so much from him already. He had lost comrades, perhaps even his entire crew. Yet here, in this silent room, he had found something unexpected. Not hope, not yet, but a reminder that even in war, there were still those who cared for the wounded, no matter what species they belonged to. His eyes grew heavy again. The last thing he saw before sleep claimed him was the nurse standing by his bed, her mask reflecting the soft blue glow of the chamber. She looked like a guardian who refused to fall, no matter how tired she was. Amir woke again to the same soft glow of the alien chamber. This time his mind was clearer, though his body still felt weak. The pain in his chest had faded a little, and the strange bed seemed to hum with warmth that eased his injuries. He turned his head slowly and found the nurse still there. She was sitting on a narrow stool by his side, her posture straight but her shoulders heavy with weariness. Her mask covered most of her face, hiding her expression, but her silver eyes revealed enough. They shifted back and forth as she studied glowing panels filled with alien symbols. Her long fingers moved gracefully across them, adjusting readings and checking his pulse. Amir lay quietly for a while, watching her. He wondered how many patients she had cared for before him. From the shadows under her eyes and the faint tremble in her hands, he guessed it had been many. Finally, he cleared his throat. "You have not left this room, have you?" The nurse looked at him, her silver eyes catching the light. She hesitated, then shook her head slightly. "I am assigned to this ward. I cannot leave until my duty is done." Her voice was calm, yet Amir thought he heard a tired edge beneath it. He wanted to know more. "What is your name?" he asked. She was silent for a moment, as if unsure whether to answer. Then she spoke softly. "Rena." Amir repeated it in his mind. Rena. A simple name, but it suited her. "I am Amir," he said. "I know," she replied. "Your identification was recovered from your uniform." Amir nodded. He wanted to ask more, but his strength was limited. Still, he felt a strange need to keep talking to her. She was the only living being he had seen since the battle. "How long have I been here?" "3 cycles," she said. "Your body was severely damaged. Our healers worked to stabilize you. You may feel weak, but your recovery is progressing." Amir frowned. He did not understand what she meant by cycles, but he guessed it was at least several days. He let out a slow breath. "I should not even be alive. Many of my crew did not make it." Rena's eyes softened. "Yes. Many lives were lost. Both human and non-human." Her words struck him. She had treated not only humans, but her own people as well. Maybe even those who had fought against him. Yet here she was, caring for him without hesitation. He studied her more closely. The mask hid her face, but he could not miss the fatigue in her eyes. They looked heavy, as if she had carried too much sorrow and too little rest. He thought about the medics he had known back home, humans who had worked through endless nights after battles, refusing to stop until every life they could save was safe. The same fire burned in Rena. "You have been working too hard," Amir said softly. "Your eyes tell the truth. You look exhausted." Rena froze again, just as she had the first time he had spoken those words. Her hand hovered above the glowing panel, and her shoulders stiffened. For a long moment, she did not move. Amir wondered if he had said something wrong. Maybe her people did not speak openly about such things. But before he could apologize, Rena lowered her hand slowly and turned toward him. Her silver eyes seemed brighter, though not from light. They looked wet, as if something hidden was pressing against them. Her voice was low, almost a whisper. "Why do you say that?" Amir gave a small shrug. wincing at the pain in his chest. Because it is true. I have seen that same look in human medics. They give everything they have, but their bodies still need rest. You are no different. Rena stared at him, silent. The mask hid her mouth, but her eyes betrayed her emotions. After a moment, she looked away and stood, walking to the far side of the room. She placed her hands on the wall, steadying herself. Amir watched, curious but quiet. He sensed that something important was happening, something fragile. Then, slowly, Rena raised her hands to her mask. With a soft motion, she pulled it free and set it aside on the table. Amir blinked. For the first time, he saw her full face. It was not exactly human, but it carried a familiar grace. Her skin held a faint glow, as if touched by silver light, and her features were sharp yet delicate. What struck him most was not her alien nature, but the deep weariness etched into her expression. Her lips trembled, and her eyes filled with tears that she no longer tried to hide. She looked at Amir as though his words had broken something inside her, not in pain, but in release. I have worn this mask for so long, she said softly. It is easier to hide behind it. Patients do not see my weakness. They only see the healer. But you looked at me, and you saw the truth. Her voice shook, and the tears slipped down her cheeks. She quickly brushed them away, as if ashamed, but more followed. Amir felt a strange ache in his chest that had nothing to do with his wounds. He wanted to comfort her, though his strength was limited. There is no shame in being tired, he said gently. Even the strongest fall when they carry too much alone. Rena let out a shaky breath. Among my people, to show weakness is to fail. We are taught to serve without question, to heal without complaint. But I am so tired, Amir. So very tired. Her words filled the chamber like a confession she had never spoken aloud before. Amir did not know what to say at first, but he remembered the long nights when human medics would sit together, sharing quiet words, reminding each other they were not alone. You do not fail by showing truth, Amir said. You prove you are alive. You prove you care. Rena's tears continued, but her breathing grew steadier. She looked at him, really looked at him, as if he had spoken something she had been waiting to hear for a long time. For a while, neither of them spoke. The silence was not heavy, but gentle, like a space where walls had fallen away. Amir closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again. He saw Rena standing taller, though her face was still wet with tears. She looked different now, not only as a nurse, but as someone real, someone who had carried too much alone and finally allowed herself to be seen. The quiet in the chamber lingered after Rena placed her mask aside. For the first time since he had woken, Amir could see her fully. Her face held lines of strain, but it was not harsh. It was the face of someone who had carried pain for too long, someone who had chosen to keep standing no matter how heavy the burden became. The faint silver glow of her skin made her look otherworldly, but the tears on her cheeks were as human as anything Amir had ever known. Amir shifted slightly on the glowing bed, wincing as his ribs protested. His voice came low, almost careful. Why do you hide yourself behind the mask? Rena touched her face lightly where the mask had rested. Her silver eyes were wet, but her voice was steady, though soft. The mask is not only to protect the patient from infection. It protects me as well. When I wear it, no one can see my weakness. My people expect healers to be unshaken, to show no doubt, no fear, no sorrow. But when you spoke to me, when you told me I looked exhausted, it was as if the mask had already been pulled away. I could not keep it on. Amir listened in silence. He could imagine her working day after day, hiding her tiredness behind that thin barrier, never once being asked about her own well-being. He thought about the medics he had known in the human fleet, how they often shared jokes or sang quietly during their hardest nights. They leaned on each other, because they had learned that no one could carry the weight alone. You should not have to hide, Amir said gently. A healer is not a machine. A healer is alive. If you carry sorrow, you should be able to show it. If you are tired, you should be able to rest. Rena gave a faint smile, though tears still clung to her lashes. In your words, there is freedom. Yet my people do not see it that way. They believe emotions are distractions, shadows that weaken the duty of care. For so long I believed it too. But now I feel something different. Perhaps strength is not only silence. Perhaps strength is also honesty. She lowered herself into the stool again, her shoulders slumping as though releasing a weight she had held for years. Amir studied her face closely. Without the mask, she looked younger, almost fragile, but at the same time stronger in a way he had not expected. The silence stretched, but it was no longer heavy. It was a space where trust grew, fragile but real. After a time, Amir spoke again. Rena, why did you choose to be a healer? She turned her gaze to the ceiling, where soft lights pulsed like stars. Her voice carried the weight of memory. When I was young, my world suffered a great storm. Many were hurt, many more lost. I was only a child, but I saw healers moving among the fallen. They did not stop. They did not turn away, even when there was little hope. In that moment, I knew what I wanted. I wanted to be like them, to give life where it seemed impossible. It was not an order. It was my choice. Amir felt a deep respect stir in him. She had chosen a life of service, not because she was forced, but because she wanted to bring comfort where there was none. It was a path of sacrifice, and it had led her here, beside him. And yet, Rena continued, her voice softening, with every life I help to save, I feel the weight of those I cannot. My people tell us not to grieve, to let go quickly, to focus only on the next task. But I cannot. I remember every face. I carry them all inside me. The mask hides my tears, but it does not erase them. Amir's chest tightened. He thought about his own losses, the faces of comrades who had fallen in battle. He carried them too, though soldiers were told to move on. He understood her more than she realized. Perhaps that is why you are strong, Amir said. Because you carry them, because you do not forget. To feel is not weakness, Rena. It is what makes us more than shadows. Her silver eyes met his, and for a moment, the distance between human and alien seemed to vanish. They were simply two people who had seen too much suffering, sharing a truth neither had been allowed to speak before. Rena wiped the last of her tears with the back of her hand. She did not put the mask back on. Instead, she set it aside and let her face remain uncovered. It was a small act, but to her it felt like defiance, a quiet declaration that she would no longer hide everything she felt. Your words are simple, she said softly, but they have reached me deeper than any speech I have heard from my own kind. Perhaps this is what makes your people different. You do not only endure. You also remind others that they do not stand alone. Amir gave a faint smile. His body still ached, but his spirit felt lighter than it had since the battle. We survive because we help each other. Sometimes it is only a few words. Sometimes it is a hand on the shoulder. But it matters. Rena's eyes softened again, this time not with sorrow, but with something gentler. It matters, she repeated, as if tasting the words for the first time. For the rest of that cycle, they spoke quietly. Amir told her about Earth, about the rivers and forests, about simple things like bread fresh from the oven and the laughter of children playing in the streets. Rena listened intently, her silver eyes shining as she absorbed each detail. She had never been to Earth, yet his words painted pictures in her mind that no mask could ever hide. And when the lights dimmed to signal the station's night, Amir drifted into sleep again. The last thing he saw was Rena seated near his bed, mask still set aside, her face calm though tired. For the first time, she allowed herself to simply be, no longer hiding behind the barrier she had worn for so long. In the quiet of that alien chamber, a fragile bond had been formed, one that carried the promise of something far greater than either of them could yet imagine. The alien station moved in silence through the endless black of space. Outside, stars glimmered like tiny fires, but inside the chamber only the soft hum of machines broke the stillness. Amir rested on the glowing bed, his body slowly healing. Beside him sat Rena, the nurse who had shown him her true face, no longer hidden by a mask. Days passed in slow rhythm. Amir's strength returned little by little. At first he could only lift his hand, then he managed to sit upright, and later he was able to take a few careful steps around the room. Each time, Rena was at his side, steadying him, guiding him back when his legs trembled. She spoke little about herself, but Amir began to notice the changes in her. Without the mask, her emotions showed freely. When he managed to take 3 steps without help, she gave a small smile that seemed brighter than the chamber lights. When he winced in pain, her brow furrowed, her silver eyes filled with worry. Amir saw in her what he had seen many times in human caretakers, compassion, deep and genuine. One evening, as the lights of the chamber dimmed to signal rest, Amir turned to her. "You always watch me," he said. "Even when you are tired." "Why?" Rena hesitated, then lowered herself into the chair by his bed. "Because you remind me of something I had forgotten. When I listen to your words, I feel what it means to care without restraint. Among my people, we are told that care must be duty, not feeling. But you speak of home, of laughter, of warmth. You make me remember that life is not only survival." Amir studied her face. The shadows under her eyes were still there, but they no longer carried only exhaustion. Now they carried a softness, as if her burden had become lighter. He leaned back against the bed and spoke slowly, his voice calm. "On earth, when times are hardest, we find strength in simple things. Music played on an old instrument. Food shared between friends. Children running and laughing even when the world outside is harsh. These small things keep us alive." Rena tilted her head slightly, her silver eyes fixed on him. "Music," she repeated. "I have heard the word, but I do not understand it fully. What is it like?" Amir smiled faintly. "It is sound given shape. A melody that can carry joy or sorrow. Sometimes one song can say more than 1,000 words. It can make you remember, or it can give you hope when you have none." Rena closed her eyes as if trying to imagine it. "We have sounds of nature on my world. The winds through the crystal valleys, the low hum of the great seas. They bring calm. But what you describe feels different. It feels alive." "Yes," Amir said softly. "That is what makes it special. It connects people. Even in battle, when everything seems lost, one song can give strength to many." The chamber fell quiet for a while after that. Rena seemed lost in thought, her long fingers brushing the edge of the bed absent-mindedly. Amir watched her, realizing how strange and yet how natural it felt to share these moments with someone not human. Later, Rena spoke again, her voice low. "When I was a child, before the storm that changed my world, I remember my mother telling me stories. She spoke of the stars as living things, each carrying the memory of those who had gone before. I used to believe them. But as I grew, I was told to forget such ideas. They said only reason and duty mattered. Now, hearing your words, I remember that feeling again." Amir gave a small nod. "On Earth, many still believe the stars hold memories too. When we look up, we do not only see light. We see reminders of those we miss. Maybe across the universe, some truths are the same." Her silver eyes shone with a new light at his words. For the first time, Amir felt that the walls between them were not only breaking but vanishing. They were no longer a human soldier and an alien nurse. They were two souls speaking in the quiet, finding strength in each other. As the cycles continued, their bond grew stronger. Amir would tell her more about Earth, the taste of fresh bread, the sight of rain falling on rooftops, the warmth of holding another's hand. Rena listened with deep focus, as if every detail was a treasure. In return, she began to share small fragments of her own life. She spoke of her world's skies, filled with floating crystal islands that glowed at night. She spoke of her first lessons as a healer, when she learned to use the shimmering machines that hummed softly in the chamber now. She spoke of her doubts, the nights when she wanted to rest but could not, and the faces of patients she still carried in her memory. Each story tied them closer. Amir often thought about how strange it was that war had brought him here, yet in this place of silence he had found a connection stronger than any alliance signed by fleets. One cycle, when the chamber was especially quiet, Amir looked at Rena and said, "I used to think survival meant fighting, standing tall, refusing to fall. But now I think survival also means sharing your burden. Letting someone else see your weakness, and letting them give you strength." Rena's lips curved in a faint but genuine smile. "That is what you have done for me. With only simple words, you gave me space to breathe. I thought my tears were shameful, but you showed me they were proof I still cared." Amir felt a warmth in his chest, not from the machines but from her words. He knew then that their bond was not only born of chance. It was something both of them needed, something that made the endless silence of space less empty. When he lay back to rest again, he no longer felt like a broken soldier. He felt like someone who had given as much as he had received. Rena remained near his bed, her mask still set aside, her eyes soft as she watched him drift to sleep. The quiet bond they had built now stood strong, a bridge between two worlds that had once seen only war. The silence of the alien chamber had begun to feel almost peaceful. Amir's wounds were healing well, and Rena no longer wore her mask when she was with him. Their bond had grown stronger, built through quiet conversations and shared moments. But peace never lasted long on a station surrounded by war. It began with a low sound, like a rumble deep within the walls. The bed beneath Amir shook, and the lights flickered. Then the alarms came, sharp and piercing, echoing through every corridor. The gentle hum of the chamber changed into a fast rhythm, warning of danger. Rena stood at once, her posture tense. Her silver eyes shifted toward the door. "More transports have arrived," she said quickly. "The battle outside has left many wounded." Before Amir could reply, the door slid open. Medics rushed inside, guiding stretchers that carried both human and alien bodies. Some groaned weakly, others lay motionless but breathing. The quiet chamber turned into a storm of movement, voices rising as healers gave orders and machines were pushed into place. Amir struggled to sit up. His ribs still hurt, but the sight before him drove away his hesitation. He had seen many battlefields, and this was no different except for the curved alien walls and the strange glowing tools. The cries of the wounded were the same, no matter the species. Rena hurried from one bed to another, her hands moving with precision. She applied glowing patches to stop bleeding, adjusted breathing masks, and directed assistants with clear commands. Yet Amir noticed the strain on her face. She had already given so much, and now the flood of new patients demanded even more. A human soldier on a nearby stretcher cried out in pain, clutching his side. The alien medic beside him hesitated, unsure of the anatomy. Amir pushed himself off his bed, ignoring the protest of his healing body. He stumbled toward the stretcher and leaned down, pointing quickly. "Pressure here, not there. If you press too high, you'll collapse the lung." The medic looked at him in surprise, then followed his instructions. The soldier's breathing eased, though he still groaned in pain. Amir steadied himself against the side of the stretcher, his legs weak but his voice firm. "I know battlefield wounds. Let me help." Rena turned sharply when she saw him. "You should not be standing," she said, her voice filled with both worry and command. Amir met her gaze. "I cannot lie in bed while others suffer. I can still guide, still do something. You know it?" For a moment, Rena's lips pressed together. Then she gave a short nod. "Stay near me. Do not push your body beyond what it can endure." Together, they moved from patient to patient. Amir pointed out human injuries, telling the alien medics where to cut, where to seal, how to hold pressure until the machines could finish the job. His knowledge filled the gaps where alien healers hesitated. Meanwhile, Rena worked with steady speed, her hands glowing with strange tools that knitted flesh and closed wounds faster than anything Amir had seen before. The chamber became a whirlwind. Cries of pain filled the air, mixed with the sharp hum of medical devices. Assistants ran back and forth carrying supplies, while monitors flashed warnings in glowing alien script. Yet amid the chaos, Amir and Rena worked side by side. At one point, a young alien soldier collapsed as his breathing failed. Rena was already at his side, but the device she used sputtered, its energy drained. Amir knelt beside her, holding the patient's head steady. "Keep the airway open," he instructed. "I'll compress the chest." His hands moved in rhythm, pressing firmly. The alien's chest rose and fell under his efforts. Rena's hands glowed again as she repaired the damage. Finally, the soldier gasped, drawing a weak but steady breath. Rena let out a quiet exhale of relief. She glanced at Amir, her silver eyes meeting his with something more than gratitude. It was respect, a silent acknowledgement that without him, the patient would not have survived. Hours passed like minutes. When at last the rush slowed, the chamber was filled with rows of resting patients. Some were still weak, others unconscious, but they were alive. The hum of machines returned to a calmer rhythm. Amir leaned heavily against a bed, his body trembling from exhaustion. His healing ribs ached fiercely, but he forced himself to stay upright. Rena came to him quickly, placing a firm hand on his arm. "You have done too much," she said. "You should lie down." He gave a tired smile. "I told you before. Sometimes strength is not standing alone. Today we stood together. That is why they are alive." Rena's face softened. She guided him back to his own bed and adjusted the glowing surface beneath him. For once, she did not hide the emotions in her eyes. They were tired, yes, but also filled with pride. "You showed me something today," she said quietly. "My people say healers must not show weakness, but you showed weakness and still gave strength. You could barely stand, yet you saved lives. Perhaps weakness and strength are not opposites after all." Amir closed his eyes briefly, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. "It is not weakness to need rest. It is not weakness to ask for help. That is how we survive. Alone, we fall. Together, we rise." Rena sat beside him, silent for a moment. Then she nodded slowly. "Together," she repeated, as if sealing the word in her heart. The alarms had stopped, but the memory of the crisis lingered. The chamber carried the smell of blood and medicine, the air heavy with fatigue. Yet it also carried something new. Amid the sorrow and exhaustion, there was hope not only because lives had been saved, but because two healers from different worlds had discovered the same truth. As Amir drifted into sleep, he felt her presence beside him. She did not put her mask back on. She sat quietly, watching over him just as she had from the beginning. But now her silver eyes no longer carried the weight of solitude. They carried the shared strength of a bond forged in chaos. The battle outside might still rage, but within that chamber, something powerful had begun to grow. The alien station had quieted after the rush of wounded soldiers. The machines still hummed softly, keeping those who were still weak stable. Amir sat on his glowing bed, rubbing the soreness from his ribs. The battle outside continued, but inside the chamber, a fragile calm had returned. Rena moved among the patients, tending to their needs with careful precision. She had recovered some of her usual rhythm, but Amir noticed something different. Her silver eyes no longer held only exhaustion. There was now a softness in them, a light that had grown since he had first spoken words that saw her truth. Amir watched her work and could not help but speak. "You are strong, Rena, but you are stronger than you know. Today you saved so many, and yet you still stayed by my side." Rena paused briefly, then adjusted a breathing mask on a young human soldier. "Strength comes in many forms," she said softly. "Some think it is only the ability to fight. Others think it is to never feel. But what I saw today is different. You helped me see another kind of strength, one that comes from caring for others even when you yourself are weak." Amir smiled faintly. "That is what humans do. We fight, yes, but we survive because we care. Even for strangers. We cannot endure alone." Rena studied him closely. "Your people must be remarkable. You show courage in battle, but your hearts are open. You give hope even when there seems to be none." Amir leaned back against the bed, exhaustion pressing on him, but his mind alive with thought. "It is not that we are always brave or unafraid. We are afraid often, and yet we act. We fail sometimes, and yet we try again. It is the act of reaching out, helping another, that makes the difference." Rena nodded. She moved closer to him and lowered herself onto the edge of his bed. Her silver eyes seemed to shine in the pale glow. "I have spent my life following rules, following orders, believing that to show emotion is to fail. But today I saw that even in the darkest moments, compassion can guide action. Your presence reminded me that empathy is a strength, not a weakness." Amir looked at her with deep respect. He had thought he knew the meaning of duty, but Rena's words made him see it in a new light. We may come from different worlds, but perhaps the same truths exist everywhere. Life is worth protecting, and kindness is a weapon stronger than any sword or energy field. Rena's hand rested lightly on the edge of his bed. She hesitated, then spoke softly. "I do not know if my people will ever understand this. They value order above all else. But I have seen it, Amir. I have seen what humans can do. I will remember it, and perhaps I will teach others one day." Amir nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "Every act counts," he said. "Even small actions. Even a kind word, a gentle touch. They can give someone the strength to stand again." Rena's gaze softened as she looked out the viewport, where distant stars flickered in the darkness of space. "I have witnessed so much loss, so much suffering. And yet, today, I also witnessed hope. It came from you, from your words, from the way you guided me without command, without pride. That is humanity." Amir watched her, realizing that the lessons he had learned on the battlefield were now mirrored in this quiet chamber. He had fought against enemies, endured pain, and survived. Yet the greatest lesson was not about skill or courage in combat. It was about connection. About being present for someone when they needed it most. The hum of the machines, the soft glow of the bed, and the quiet movements of Rena created a rhythm that filled the chamber with life. Amir realized that battles could be fought and won not only with weapons but with trust, care, and understanding. Rena looked at him and spoke again, her voice steady. "I will not forget this day. I will carry it with me as proof that even when the world seems harsh, compassion can change outcomes. I have been a healer, but now I see that I am also a student. Today you taught me what it truly means to be human." Amir smiled, though he was still weak. "And today, you taught me that strength is not only in fighting. It is in giving, in seeing, and in understanding. Even beings from different worlds can find common ground through care." She nodded, and for a moment, neither spoke. The quiet was not empty but filled with understanding. The station outside might still be under threat, and more patients could arrive at any time, but the lessons of today would not fade. Amir thought about the lives they had saved together, human and alien alike. Each one represented more than survival, each one represented the choice to help, to care, and to act with empathy. That simple principle, he realized, was what had allowed humans to endure through countless wars and hardships. Rena glanced at him again, her silver eyes reflecting the light of the chamber. "Perhaps your people are not only survivors," she said softly. "Perhaps you are teachers, too. Not only of war, but of life. You remind others of what matters. That is something rare and powerful." Amir reached out slightly, offering his hand. She hesitated briefly, then took it. The touch was gentle, and it carried with it the understanding of all that had happened in the past cycles. Words were not needed, the connection spoke for itself. They sat quietly, hand in hand, watching the lights of the station pulse softly. In that moment, they were not healer and patient, not human and alien, not soldier and nurse. They were two beings who had shared a profound truth, that life is strengthened through compassion, and that even in the darkest times, hope could survive when hearts were open. The station would continue its patrols and missions. Battles would rage outside. Injuries would come. Yet Amir and Rena knew they had witnessed something far greater than any conflict. They had witnessed the power of understanding, the strength of shared care, and the lesson that humanity carried in its simplest acts of kindness. Amir felt his body finally relax. For the first time in many cycles, he did not feel only pain and exhaustion. He felt alive in a way deeper than survival. He had learned a lesson not written in manuals or drills, that life was precious, and strength was not measured in victories alone, but in the care one offered to others. Rena squeezed his hand lightly. "Thank you, Amir," she whispered. "For showing me this. For letting me see that even in war, there can be humanity." Amir smiled faintly and nodded. "And thank you, Rena. For caring, for teaching, and for seeing me as more than a soldier. That is the greatest lesson of all." The chamber fell into gentle quiet. The machines hummed, the stars outside twinkled, and two beings from different worlds shared a moment of understanding that would echo far beyond the walls of the station. Amir awoke to the soft glow of the chamber lights. His body felt stronger now, the deep ache of battle fading with each cycle. He sat up carefully, testing his ribs, and found that he could move without sharp pain. The last days had been challenging, yet through them, he had discovered more than healing. He had discovered connection, trust, and the quiet strength that comes from care. Rena stood beside the bed, her silver eyes focused on the monitors but with a calm presence that made the room feel steady. The mask remained set aside, resting on the table, and her face carried no trace of hiding. The faint glow of her skin reflected the lights above, giving her a peaceful look. Amir smiled at her, and she returned the gesture with a soft nod. "You are ready to walk today," she said, her voice gentle. "The wounds have healed enough, and your strength has returned." Amir swung his legs over the side of the bed, taking a moment to balance. He looked at Rena and said, "You will walk with me, won't you?" Rena hesitated briefly. Her hands rested on the edge of the bed, steady and sure. "I will," she replied. "But slowly. Do not strain yourself." Amir nodded, and together, they began to move. Each step was careful, measured, yet filled with purpose. The chamber had become more than a medical room, it was a space of learning, where each movement was supported, where patience and care created confidence. As they walked, Amir spoke quietly. "Rena, do you remember the first day I woke here?" She glanced at him, her silver eyes reflecting faint amusement and a trace of memory. "Yes. You were confused and in pain. I was trying to hide how exhausted I felt." Amir smiled. "And I told you that you looked exhausted. I did not know it would matter so much." Rena's lips curved in a faint smile. It did matter. Your words reminded me that showing truth is not failure. You made me see that even when one is tired, care can continue. That lesson has stayed with me. Amir felt warmth in his chest. He understood now that their bond had not only helped him recover but had given Rena a new understanding of herself. She had allowed herself to be seen, and in doing so, had found strength she did not know she possessed. The door to the chamber slid open, and fresh air from the station's corridors entered. He saw other healers and patients moving, some returning from procedures, others resting. The hum of the machines mixed with faint conversation, but Amir and Rena moved through it as if in their own quiet world. They reached the station's viewport, a wide glass wall that looked out into the vast black of space. Stars stretched endlessly, some distant and faint, others bright and close. The view was breathtaking, even for someone who had traveled through the stars many times. Amir leaned lightly against the railing and looked at Rena. "Do you see that?" he asked. "Even in darkness, there is light. Even in the middle of war, there is beauty." Rena followed his gaze. "Yes. I have seen it before in my world, but now I see it with new eyes. Your words, your presence, they have taught me to notice what I had forgotten." Amir smiled faintly. "We all forget sometimes. That is why we need each other. You reminded me that even a healer carries hope, and I reminded you that even a soldier can teach lessons." Rena turned to him, her silver eyes glistening slightly. "I never thought I would cry in front of a patient," she said softly. "But you made me see that it was not weakness. My tears are proof that I care. And that is not shameful. That is strength." Amir nodded. "It is. And it is the kind of strength that can change lives, even in the middle of war." They stood quietly, side by side, looking out at the stars. The silence was comfortable, a companion to the lessons they had shared. Amir realized that their bond had grown beyond healer and patient, beyond human and alien. It was a connection built on trust, understanding, and the courage to be seen as they truly were. Rena finally spoke again, her voice calm but firm. "When you leave this chamber, when you return to your people, you will carry what you learned here. And I will carry it too. Not only the knowledge of healing but the understanding that empathy and compassion are as important as any skill or tool." Amir turned to her with a faint smile. "That is something I will never forget. And I hope, one day, our worlds can learn from each other in the same way. War is not just about survival. It is about remembering what makes life worth living." Rena's gaze softened. She reached out and gently placed her hand over his. "You have reminded me that life is precious. That to care, even in the face of exhaustion, is a gift. Your humanity has taught me more than I could have imagined." Amir felt a quiet pride, not for himself, but for the bond they had formed. He realized that victory was not only measured in battles won but in moments like this, when understanding bridged the distance between two beings from different worlds. The chamber grew quieter as more patients rested and healers tended to their needs. The stars outside continued to shine, timeless and unchanging, as if witnessing the small but powerful connection inside the station. Amir and Rena continued to stand together, hands lightly touching, a shared understanding between them. She was no longer just the nurse who cared for him, she was a companion, a witness to his recovery, and a friend who had shared her truth. Finally, Amir spoke again. "Thank you, Rena. For your care, for your trust, and for letting me see you as you are. I will carry this with me always." Rena smiled softly, her eyes reflecting the stars. "And I will carry you with me as well, Amir. Your presence reminded me that to feel is not weakness. To care is not burden. It is life itself." They remained there for some time, watching the stars together. Outside, the station continued its work, and battles may still rage in the distance, but within that chamber, a quiet victory had been achieved. 2 lives had been changed, 2 hearts had been opened, and a lesson of compassion and courage had been learned. As Amir prepared to leave the chamber, he turned to Rina one last time. I will return to my world, but I will not forget what you taught me. You reminded me that humanity is not only about strength in battle, but about strength in caring for one another. Rina nodded, her silver eyes shining with quiet pride. And you reminded me that even when I am tired, even when I have given all I can, I am not alone. That is a lesson I will carry forever. Amir stepped forward, ready to leave, but paused. He looked back at Rina, the nurse who had cried, the healer who had shared her truth, and the friend who had walked beside him through pain and fear. Goodbye for now, he said softly. Goodbye, Amir, she replied. May your journey be safe, and may you always carry hope in your heart.